What if love, the feeling we swear is sacred, is nothing but bait? Not a miracle, not destiny, not the poetry we've been fed since childhood, but a trap set by nature itself. Schopenhauer saw through the veil. Where others wrote sonnets, he wrote indictments. Where others saw soulmates, he saw prisoners shackled by instincts they couldn't escape. To him, love was not a blessing. It was a lie, the most seductive illusion ever engineered. It dresses itself in music and candlelight, in whispered promises and trembling hands. But beneath the surface, its purpose is brutal: reproduction. Nature doesn't care about your happiness, your dreams, or your eternal vows. It cares about one thing only: continuation. Think about it. The ecstasy of attraction, the sleepless nights, the obsession that feels like madness, all of it is chemistry. A biological frenzy that lures us into choices we believe are our own, when in reality, we are merely executing nature's script. You don't choose who you fall for. You are chosen by instincts older than civilization. And yet, because the illusion is so powerful, we worship it. We build songs, myths, entire religions around this feeling, as if love were divine. But Schopenhauer dared to whisper the forbidden. Love is not divine. It is deception. It enslaves men and women alike, binding them together just long enough to serve the will. That blind, merciless force of life that wants only to survive. Worse still, the lie doesn't last. The fire that once seemed eternal inevitably cools. The face that once looked like salvation becomes ordinary. The obsession fades, leaving disappointment, resentment, or emptiness in its place. Why? Because the job is done. Nature has already extracted what it wanted from you, and when its purpose is fulfilled, it abandons you. This is why so many love stories end not in fulfillment, but in despair. Not because people failed, but because they were tricked from the very beginning. Schopenhauer's message is not comfortable, but it is clear. What we call love is nothing more than instinct, wearing the mask of eternity. You think you're chasing meaning. You're chasing biology. And once you see through the illusion, you may never look at love the same way again. Next, if love is a lie, then what is woman's role in this grand deception? Schopenhauer's answer was as chilling as it was unforgettable. What if women were never individuals in the eyes of nature, but vessels? Not heroines of romance, not the mysterious muses of poetry, but instruments carved by a force that cares nothing for dignity or choice. Schopenhauer stripped away every comforting illusion. He saw women not as free agents of destiny, but as embodiments of the will, that blind, ruthless drive to perpetuate life at any cost. In his eyes, culture, morality, even law were irrelevant. Beneath the thin veil of civilization, women were shaped with one function in mind: continuation. Every detail of their being, from the allure of youth to the instincts of protection, was engineered by nature for survival. Beauty, allure, emotion, a weapon, nurturing, a strategy, nothing random, nothing accidental, all of it serving a purpose older than humanity itself. This is not flattery. Schopenhauer did not romanticize what he saw. He called it what it was: design, a design that does not ask but demands. For the will, women are not individuals to be celebrated, but vessels to be used. Their bodies are the blueprints of reproduction, their emotions the levers of preservation, their choices illusions laid over a foundation built by biology. And it doesn't stop there. What appears as kindness or care can be read as calculation. The instinct to nurture is not about virtue. It is about securing the future. Even sacrifice, often hailed as moral greatness, becomes a mechanism of survival. Nature does not waste, it programs. And in this program, women are essential, but never autonomous. Schopenhauer's point was not cruelty, but clarity. The will does not see your ideals. It does not care for equality or progress. It only sees utility. Men are the expendable pioneers. Women, the vessels of continuity. Two halves of the same ruthless equation. The tragedy is that civilization convinces us otherwise, feeding us fantasies of freedom and fairness, when beneath the surface, the script has already been written. So, if women are nature's instruments, then what is the instrument's most dangerous feature? According to Schopenhauer, it isn't strength or reason or law. It is beauty, the most seductive trap ever devised. What if beauty wasn't a gift, but a trap? Not a celebration of life, not the divine spark sung about in poetry, but nature's camouflage, the most effective snare ever devised. Schopenhauer believed beauty was never meant to inspire truth or art. Its function was simpler and far more brutal, to blind men, to bind them, and to keep the species moving forward. Look closely. Youth, smooth skin, symmetry. The very features that ignite desire are not random preferences. They are evolutionary signals, flashing silently in the mind of every man. Fertility, health, reproduction. What we call attraction is not taste. It is instinct whispering commands. Men think they are falling in love with a person. In reality, they are falling into nature's machinery. And the trap works because it doesn't feel like a trap. Beauty doesn't shout. It seduces. It convinces you that your hunger is choice, that your obsession is unique. It drives men to risk fortunes, kingdoms, even their lives. All for a face, a form, a promise that disappears as quickly as it appeared. Schopenhauer saw this not as romance, but as strategy. Nature had equipped women with the perfect disguise. Beauty lures men into servitude without chains, without threats, without force. Men give willingly, even eagerly, believing they are choosing their path, when in fact, the path was laid long before them. The tragedy is that beauty fades, but the damage it causes does not. When the mask of youth slips away, the man awakens to a truth he was never meant to see, that he was baited, used, and discarded by the very force that once enchanted him. Love collapses, families fracture, and despair follows, not by accident, but by design. Beauty was never for you. It was for the will. That blind, relentless drive Schopenhauer exposed, a strategy written into flesh, played out in silence, repeated across every generation. And if beauty is bait, then the question becomes, what happens once you're caught? The answer lies not in force, but in finesse, in the emotional weapons nature gave women when physical power was denied. Next, the emotional weapon. How influence disguised as care became the most silent and devastating
Not all
form
weapons
of control. Some persuade, some whisper, some move pieces on the board without ever appearing in the game. Schopenhauer believed that when history denied women brute force, they turned to something far more dangerous, subtlety. If men ruled the battlefield, women ruled the mind, and their weapon was not the sword, but emotion. Think of it. A command shouted sparks resistance. A suggestion murmured, feels like your own idea. This is the genius of emotional power. It bends outcomes without ever revealing the hand that shaped them. What looks like care may be pressure. What sounds like vulnerability may be manipulation. What feels like love may be leverage. For Schopenhauer, this wasn't morality. It wasn't malice. It was survival. Locked out of direct authority, women sharpened what nature had already given them: instinct, sensitivity, and the ability to read the invisible currents of human behavior. They learned to adjust tone, expression, silence, the smallest signals, until they could shift the direction of entire lives without lifting a finger. Men argue, women persuade by huidang. Men declare, women imply. This isn't weakness, it is strategy. When force is denied, finesse becomes necessity, and over generations, it became mastery. The brilliance of this weapon is its invisibility. No record of commands, no orders to trace. Influence passes through affection, fear, or guilt, leaving the man convinced he is free while unknowingly carrying out another's design. That illusion of freedom makes the influence stronger than any visible chain. Schopenhauer warned that this hidden power was not just personal, but civilizational. While men built empires in stone, women learned to shape the men who built them. Suggestion became empire. Persuasion became dynasty. Emotional leverage, soft, unseen, undeniable, outlasted armies. This is why he saw emotion not merely as feeling, but as weaponized survival. Not forged in steel, but in silence. Not shouted in battle, but whispered at night. And if emotion is a weapon, then the war it wages is not against enemies, but against truth itself. Because once emotion takes the throne, facts lose their crown. Next, the battle of time. Why men chase the future, while women anchor to the present, and how this divide fuels endless conflict. What if men and women live in different timelines? What if every argument, every fracture, every unspoken resentment comes not from malice, but from clocks that never strike the same hour? Schopenhauer believed that time itself divided the sexes. Men drawn toward the future, women bound to the present. And from this split, endless misunderstanding was born. For the man, time is a battlefield that lies ahead. His eyes are fixed on horizons he may never reach. He sacrifices today for tomorrow, building, competing, gambling his comfort for legacy. His hunger isn't for safety, but for possibility. Every risk, every restless move is a wager against the void. For the woman, time is immediate. It pulses in the now. A child needs protection today. A home requires stability tonight. Food, safety, shelter. These are not dreams, they are imperatives. Her instincts are not tuned for distant horizons, but for the ground beneath her feet. To her, the present is not small, it is survival. Neither is wrong. Both are necessary. Yet the divide is inescapable. A man sees a woman's caution as fear. She sees his ambition as recklessness. He reaches into the future, blinded to the dangers of today. She anchors to the present, unwilling to risk what already exists. The more he dreams, the more she doubts. The more she holds back, the more he feels caged. This is not romance. It is conflict written into biology. One sex gambles the present for a chance at tomorrow. The other protects today to ensure tomorrow exists at all. But love is forced to live between these two clocks, torn between reaching forward and holding on. Schopenhauer saw this tension not as an accident, but as the design of the will, a division that guarantees both expansion and survival, but at the cost of perpetual friction. Men die chasing the future. Women endure preserving the present, and between them lies a battlefield where no side truly wins. So, if time divides the sexes, what happens when society itself demands sameness? The answer, Schopenhauer warned, is illusion masquerading as progress. Next, the illusion of equality. Why pretending men and women are the same only deepens resentment and chaos. What if equality itself is the biggest illusion of all? Not liberation, not progress, but a lie powerful enough to blind entire civilizations. Schopenhauer saw through the rhetoric. Where modern ideology insisted men and women were the same, he called it what it was: denial. A refusal to acknowledge differences older than history, written not in books, but in blood, bone, and instinct. For most of human existence, no one needed philosophy or science to recognize the divide. Men and women lived different lives, driven by different instincts, bound to different roles. The farmer didn't consult biology textbooks to know his wife was anchored to survival, while he risked his life for expansion. The soldier didn't need theory to know men were disposable in war, while women were indispensable in continuity. These truths were visible, undeniable, and brutally obvious. Only in the modern age has sameness been preached as gospel. The story goes, if we treat men and women as identical, they will become identical. But Schopenhauer laughed at this illusion. He knew instinct cannot be legislated away. Biology doesn't dissolve in the ink of ideology. The will does not care for your dreams of equality. It only cares for survival. And yet, the cost of the lie is enormous. When we pretend men and women want the same things, desire the same futures, or respond to the world in the same way, we set them against each other. Men expect women to embrace risk and ambition. Women expect men to provide constant safety and presence. Both feel betrayed. Both feel deceived. And trust collapses, not because either side failed, but because the promise itself was false. Equality, when it ignores biology, becomes poison. It breeds resentment where there should be understanding, confusion where there should be clarity. Men feel stripped of purpose. Women feel pushed into roles that don't fulfill them. The result is not harmony, but fracture. Schopenhauer warned that civilization cannot survive on lies. To build on illusion is to guarantee collapse. The sexes are not enemies, but they are not mirrors either. Their differences are not oppression. They are design. And when the illusion of equality shatters, what remains is not unity. It is power, silent, invisible, and more dangerous than any law. Next, power without authority. How women shaped history, not through crowns and armies, but through influence hidden beneath the surface. What if the most powerful influence never holds a crown? History is littered with kings, generals, and emperors, names etched in stone, remembered for the wars they fought and the empires they carved. But Schopenhauer argued that these were not the true rulers of history. The real power, he believed, worked in silence, not through armies, but through need, not through commands, but through desire. Women, denied thrones and titles, learned to govern from the shadows. Their influence was subtle, invisible, and yet far more enduring than the decrees of kings. Schopenhauer called it the hidden governance of desire. A woman did not need to rule a nation when she could rule the man who ruled it. She did not need to wear a crown when she could bend the crown bearer himself. This is power without accountability, the queen behind the king, the whisper behind the law, not formal authority, but influence so deep that men mistook it for their own will. A general believed he waged war for glory, when in truth he was chasing the admiration of women. A merchant believed he sought wealth for independence, but beneath it was the hunger to attract, to provide, to prove his worth in a game he did not design. What makes this power terrifying is its deniability. Authority can be challenged. Influence cannot. A ruler signs his name on history. A woman leaves no signature, only outcomes. Her strength lies in invisibility. She shapes decisions without ever appearing to make them. And the less visible her power, the stronger it becomes. Schopenhauer believed this invisible influence was not an accident of culture, but a strategy of nature. Denied brute force, women perfected leverage. Denied open power, they mastered hidden power. And through this arrangement, the will ensured its survival. Men fought wars, built empires, tore the world apart, and women steered them quietly, relentlessly, toward nature's ends. History records the names of rulers, but history itself was often written in the shadows, by those who never signed their names. And if power without authority is the hidden engine of history, Schopenhauer warned that its most dangerous consequence is the endless hunger it creates in men, a hunger that can never be satisfied. Next, the male's endless hunger. Why men, no matter how much they achieve, remain haunted by a void that nothing can fill. Why are men never satisfied? Why does every victory feel hollow, every success dissolve into a new hunger? Schopenhauer believed men were cursed, chained to ambition like prisoners dragging their own shackles. What looks like triumph on the outside is torment within. For men, achievement is never an end. It is bait. The moment one goal is reached, another appears, larger, more distant, more demanding. A man climbs a mountain only to discover another peak beyond it, and another, and another. He cannot stop, because his worth is measured not in peace, but in pursuit. He is praised for striving, not resting, for building, not enjoying, for conquering, not contentment. Schopenhauer saw this not as culture, but as biology's design. The male is expendable, made to push boundaries, to risk, to reach for futures that may never come. His hunger ensures progress, but it also ensures torment. The will does not reward him with peace. It enslaves him with restlessness. Even in moments of glory, he feels the void beneath his feet, the whisper that it isn't enough, that he isn't enough. And here lies the cruel symmetry. While men burn themselves chasing the infinite, women remain tethered to the immediate. She asks for safety, presence, stability. He hungers for expansion, recognition, immortality. To her, his obsession looks reckless. To him, her caution feels suffocating. And in that clash, frustration blooms. He resents her restraint. She distrusts his ambition. Neither wrong, both trapped. Worse still, this hunger leaves men open to exploitation. The void within them is easily filled with flattery, manipulation, or promises of what they crave most: validation. Women, Schopenhauer noted, often become both anchor and tormentor, grounding men while subtly leveraging their endless need. She becomes the mirror he chases, the approval he cannot live without. The tragedy is that the more a man achieves, the less satisfied he becomes. Legacy, wealth, power, none of it silences the gnawing hunger. His triumphs only sharpen the emptiness. Schopenhauer called this the fate of the male will: to chase forever, to burn forever, to die never having arrived. Ambition is not freedom. It is a curse disguised as greatness. Next, emotion over truth. How the dominance of feeling over fact reshapes reality itself, blurring the line between survival and delusion. What happens when feelings replace facts? When reality itself is judged not by what is true, but by how it makes us feel? Schopenhauer warned that this is not a philosophical riddle. It is the very structure of the feminine mind, as shaped by nature. For women, he argued, truth bends to emotion. A harsh fact, even if undeniable, becomes wrong if it causes pain. A soothing lie, even if false, becomes right if it preserves harmony. At first glance, this seems irrational, but to Schopenhauer, it was survival. For millennia, women lived without direct power, without law, without the sword. Emotion became their shield and their weapon. To them, truth was never an abstract principle to be honored. It was a tool to be used or discarded, depending on whether it secured protection, comfort, or safety. This is why, he argued, women excel at persuasion, at suggestion, at the subtle inversion of reality. Not because they sought to deceive maliciously, but because instinct demanded it. Nature rewarded what worked, and what worked was not the hard, cold fact, but the narrative that soothed, the story that softened, the lie that kept the fragile order intact. But Schopenhauer's warning cut deeper. When this instinct is elevated beyond the private sphere, when emotion becomes the engine of society itself, clarity dissolves. Laws become driven by sentiment rather than principle. Justice bends under the weight of sympathy. Leaders are judged not on what is true, but on how their words feel. And truth, once dethroned, never regains its power without blood. It is here, he believed, that civilization begins to decay, because not all truths are comforting. Some cut, some offend, some expose the very illusions we depend on. A society unwilling to endure those cuts, unwilling to face those discomforts, condemns itself to delusion. And delusion is not progress. It is collapse in disguise. Schopenhauer's point was merciless. Emotion is necessary, but it cannot lead. When it rules, truth is silenced, clarity is lost, and civilization begins to rot from within. And if emotion can corrupt truth, what does that mean for the fragile construction we call civilization? That thin wall holding back the chaos of nature. Next, civilization versus nature. How the order we build is only a mask, and what happens when the mask inevitably slips. What if everything we call progress is just a thin mask over biology? A fragile disguise covering forces older than language, older than law, older than civilization itself. Schopenhauer believed that beneath our towers, our systems, our ideals, lies the same blind will, primitive, ruthless, and untamed. Civilization, he argued, is not natural. It is an invention, a cage built by men to restrain chaos, to hold back the flood of instinct that would otherwise tear society apart. Rules, laws, institutions, these are bars on the cage, fragile bars, easily bent. And though we pretend the cage is permanent, Schopenhauer saw its weakness. It is maintained only by discipline, only by sacrifice, only by the constant effort of those willing to suffer for order. But the will does not rest. It lurks beneath, indifferent to morality, laughing at our illusions of equality, harmony, or love. And when those illusions crack, as they always do, nature reclaims its throne. Not slowly, not gently, brutally. Love reveals itself as reproduction's trick. Equality dissolves into resentment. Harmony collapses under the weight of conflicting instincts. And in the ruins, the truth stands naked, that we are not free, not enlightened, not progressing toward utopia. We are pawns of a force that has no mercy, no purpose beyond survival. Women in this vision are not villains. They are nature incarnate. Instruments of the will, unstoppable, undeniable, merciless. Their power is not moral or chosen. It is structural, woven into life itself. To resist it is to resist existence. To ignore it is to live in illusion. Schopenhauer's conclusion was bleak but undeniable. Progress is not victory over nature, but a temporary mask. And when the mask slips, we remember what we are, creatures driven, not by ideals, but by hunger, fear, and the relentless will to endure. Civilization is a performance. Nature, is the author. And in the end, the script is never ours to write. The darkest truth is this: we are not evolving beyond the will. We are only circling it, hiding from it, until the moment it rips the mask away.